What up, what up, what up?
What up?
Oh, we're gonna watch the new Tucker Carlson because he's the most honest cable news host there is. So we're gonna watch him.
Still.
And hopefully it's good.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. There is a poignant but recognizable thing that happens to powerful men as they decline. They get bursts of irrational energy. The 85-year-old tycoon marries a stripper. On the face of it, the marriage does not make sense. Everybody groans. How's this arrangement going to work out for him, really? How about for his children? But the tycoon doesn't care. He isn't thinking long term. He's reacting against what he feels inside, which is the steady loss of his power as a man. The faster that power recedes, the more frantically he asserts it. He is raging against the dying of the light. These last embarrassing decisions are, in fact, his death throes. It's sad, really. Unfortunately, what happens to men also tends to happen to the systems they create. For the last 80 years, our world has been governed by a system formed in the final months of World War II. Its features define our life: free and open global trade routes guaranteed by the U.S. Navy, a universal currency called the dollar, and overseeing it all, one supreme power, the world's largest economy, the United States of America. It's been a great system in most ways. But for many reasons, including the passage of time, that system is dying. What comes next is not entirely clear, but how to influence it to America's greatest possible advantage is the most important task that faces any U.S. government. Nothing else comes close to that. Sadly, the Biden administration, geriatric and irrational in its best moments, is not up to that task. No one in the White House even seems aware that the architecture of the world is changing. They call themselves progressives, but the Biden people think it's 1961, when American power seemed unlimited. Just today, our elderly Treasury Secretary scolded the Chinese government like a tardy servant. Shape up, China, we'll send you back to the cellar. Watch this.
We have made clear that providing material support to Russia or assistance with any type of systemic sanctions evasion would be a very serious concern to us. And we will certainly continue to make clear to the Chinese government and to companies and banks in their jurisdiction about what the rules are regarding our sanctions and the serious consequences they would face for violating them.
We're going to tell them what the rules are. Once they hear the rules, they'll obey. Janet Yellen seems shocked and outraged that China has decided to align with Vladimir Putin in the war in Ukraine. It's an outrage. It's unbelievable. Who could have seen this coming? Well, almost everybody, actually. It was obvious to the world it was going to happen because it was always going to happen if we didn't force a peace in Ukraine. But somehow the Biden administration didn't see this coming. Now that it has happened, now that the world's largest country has joined with the world's largest economy, which also has the world's largest population, in order to fight a war against us, what do? Well, if you're Janet Yellen, you just order them to stop. Stop it, you naughty Chinese, stop it. Otherwise, we'll impose some serious consequences on you. We can't tell you what they are, but trust us, they are serious. They might even include further statements of outrage. So shape up, Chinese people. It's pretty amazing to watch. A lady who's never been in a fist fight ordering the Chinese military around like she owns it. You can imagine the laughter in Beijing tonight. Next we'll have Admiral Rachel Levine wagging his porky finger at Chairman Xi. Surrender your arms, China, because trans women are women! It's all pretty amusing until you realize it's real. Caught in the middle of a historic global pivot, in one of those rare moments when everything changes forever, the Biden administration has decided to live in the past and to pretend that the United States is still capable of imposing unilateral decisions on the rest of the world because we said so. Here's Joe Biden once again playing Churchill to Putin's Hitler.
Freedom is priceless. It's worth fighting for as long as it takes. And that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
As the president has said, Shannon, we're going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Again, the United States will continue to strongly support Ukraine, and we will do so for as long as it takes.
As President Biden has said, we will stand with Ukraine in its fight for as long as it takes.
Silly, ineffectual buffoons. The world is laughing. The adults are laughing. And in this country, it's a measure of our media's total corruption that no one ever asked anyone in the Biden administration what the United States is hoping to accomplish in Ukraine. As long as it takes to do what exactly? Now, the original answer was, well, to push Russia back to where it was a year ago before it invaded Ukraine. And that seemed like a reasonable and measurable objective. The public seemed behind that. Then, without fanfare or even official notice, the goal changed and became taking the Russian port of Crimea just because it would be nice to have that. Always wanted it, want to take it now. Then the goal became overthrowing Putin and putting American tanks in Red Square because, sure, we could manage Russia once we overthrow the dictator. We're good at that. We did it in Iraq. We did it in Libya. Now the objective appears to be winning World War III against both Russia and China, a war that would, by definition, include the use of nuclear weapons and the deaths by incineration of hundreds of millions of people. At this point, there is no limit to the war in Ukraine. It is all that matters. The war in Ukraine is the focus of the entire U.S. government, all branches, both parties. It is also, as our own economy degrades, as huge companies lay off thousands, the war in Ukraine is one of our main expenses. Here's Janet Yellen to explain.
Our economic assistance is making Ukraine's resistance possible by supporting the home front, funding critical public services, and helping keep the government running.
They think they're like
In the coming months, we expect to provide around $10 billion in additional economic support for Ukraine.
Okay, so just to be clear, in case you weren't listening carefully, and it's hard to understand what she's saying, but we have the transcript, that's not $10 billion more in war aid. That's to fund critical services in the government. It was Zelensky's political party, which has banned a Christian denomination and arrested priests. That's what we're paying for. And leaving aside the aims, that's still $10 billion more in tax dollars. That's on top of the $113 billion that Congress has already approved. That's $123 billion pledged to Ukraine in a year. And then once you add 1,000 other off-the-book sources of aid, the entire intel world, you're looking at perhaps $200 billion to Zelensky and his wife in 12 months. $200 billion. It's truly crazy. How much money is that? Well, to make it easier, let's pretend we'd only spent $100 billion in Ukraine so far. We know we have. What can we do with $100 billion here in the United States? Well, for one thing, and this is kind of in the news recently, we could modernize our rail system to avoid the 1,000 derailments we have every year and the mushroom clouds over Ohio that sometimes result from them. $100 billion is more than 5 times the entire discretionary budget of the Department of Transportation. There's just $13 billion in the DOT's budget for transit and less than $3 billion for Amtrak. Remember that? The artery that connects the cities on the East Coast? Then there's the FAA. That's the government agency that's supposed to prevent planes from crashing into each other and killing hundreds of Americans. The FAA got $20 billion in the last budget. $20 billion. So given that planes seem to be coming very close to hitting each other lately, it might be worth funding the FAA a little more. Oh, but no, Zelensky's political party needs it. And then, of course, with that money, we could do things that matter long term, like building a wall along our southern border. We could build 4 of them for that. That would save, in addition to a lot of other things, hundreds of thousands of American lives by blocking drug traffickers from entering the country. And then you wouldn't have a cartel war in Texas and Arizona, which we're absolutely going to get. With $100 billion, we could pay off half the medical debt in the entire country. We could pay for 2 years of community college tuition for every young person in the United States. We could fund all out-of-pocket expenses for cancer patients for 5 years. That's a lot of money. We could do a lot with it. Why isn't Bernie Sanders?
What the fuck are the people of the United States doing?
That's what I'm.
What the fuck?
That's what propaganda is. That's why every other channel and every other newscaster says we gotta fight this war. We gotta fight this war. We gotta fight this war because they're skimming the money, right? They're the biggest gangsters there are.
Exactly.
They lock up gangsters. They're the biggest gangsters there is, man. It's a joke. And the sad thing is they don't work for it. They fucking steal it from the taxpayers. And that's the worst part. No matter who they fucking vote in, the first thing they do when there's an election, the parties go on a retreat. and the retreat is with like a whole bunch of people from corporations.
Yeah.
And it's like the next, like it's a joke, man. Like look at it, AOC fucking like they're all talk. They got a nice talk, but they don't walk the walk.
Exactly.
Like at all. So get out of here. And I'm shocked. Even everybody wants to get Tucker Carlson off the air. Like you should see like my Twitter, because I follow some a lot of blue and a lot of red, and all the people on the blue, like they're nonstop trying to like, we sign this petition, get Tucker Carlson off the air. He's an asset of because he's the only one that says maybe we shouldn't be in this war. They literally call him like a Russian agent. Like it's so fucking crazy, and it's just because that's what no one thinks Putin will actually use a nuke. That's why they're doing it. And
he's the most sensible.
And when they use it, when Putin uses a nuke, they should fucking. Man, I don't know what they should do to those politicians. Because they're going to say, "Oh, Putin uses a nuke," and it's probably because you fucking forced them to. Yeah. Like it's just a joke.
Doing the math on this. Why isn't he even talking about it? Why is it left to some right-wing TV show to figure out what could be done with that money domestically? Bernie Sanders is all for sending that money to Ukraine. And it turns out most so-called progressives are. Sandy Cortez, voice of the people.
Oh, sorry. And not only that, but Biden's like on the left, so he's like a green guy. How much fucking carbon and gases and shit do you think happened from all these weapons and tanks and bombs and missiles in fucking Ukraine when they can just make a fucking deal? Like, how hard is it? And it's not that hard. And everybody knows it's because they're making money. And who knows, maybe Putin's in on it too, and that's why he's not using nuclear weapons, because they're all just because he's ripping off his people too, right? Yeah. But who knows?
That's all it is,
who the fuck knows? But I think they really do hate Putin for some reason, and
because of the Russian regime, or like.
Because if they tried to make a deal, then they'd have like evidence and shit, and you know what I mean. So they wouldn't do that probably. But then, so they're just bloodthirsty warmongers. Like even one person fucking dying if you're in charge. Like, doesn't that make you fucking feel bad?
Yeah, bro.
Like it's just a joke.
Fuck. Probably
because they say, oh, if we don't stop him here, he's gonna invade Finland and shit. It's just a joke. No, he's not. Maybe if Finland gets some fucking nuclear missiles, then maybe.
Yeah. And maybe Putin has secrets about the United States government, like
for sure he
secrets.
does.
That's what
for sure he does.
Yeah.
Same with the States, but whatever.
People, she's for it too. It's fascinating. Of course, we could also just keep the money. That'd be useful. We need it. Our national debt is now over $31 trillion. It's bigger than our GDP. Our debt is bigger than our GDP. In just the last 27 months, the Biden administration has increased the national debt by $7 trillion. How much is that? I mean, it's an incomprehensible number, but here's the context. It took 215 years from George Washington to George W. Bush to accrue that much debt. Interest payments on that debt have hit more than $400 billion this year. So according to calculations by Pew, that's $100 billion more per year than we spent on elementary and secondary education, disaster relief, agriculture, and environmental protection combined. Within the next decade, interest costs on the debt will be greater than spending on national defense and Medicaid. Within 30 years, interest payments will be the single largest expenditure in the entire federal budget, bigger than Social Security. And a lot of that debt, you should know, well over $1 trillion, is owned by China, the country we're now fighting in Ukraine. You see how this works? Most Americans do see how it works, and they oppose it. They're afraid of it. They should be. Polls show clearly they oppose it. But here's the interesting thing. Neither party in Washington cares what their voters think. Here, for example, is Republican Michael McCaul. He is the Republican Party's head foreign policy genius in the House, a man completely controlled by the intel agencies. But here he is on television explaining that in a democracy, it doesn't matter what voters think.
And a new poll is showing support among Americans for arming Ukraine is dropping. How concerned, Congressman McCall, are foreign leaders you're speaking to that American support for Ukraine, particularly within your own party, is weakening?
I would say that support is still very strong, and this delegation that's bipartisan, very strong support for Ukraine. I think where you're seeing a split from the administration, though, and I have to say that, Pamela, this is bipartisan as well, is that for the past year we've been very slow at getting these weapons in the name of it being too provocative, whether it be Stingers, Javelins, these short-range artillery, now longer-range artillery, ATACMS that can take out the Iranian drones in Crimea, and also aviation like F-16. If we put this stuff in from the very beginning of this conflict, a year from now it may have been very different.
So you'll notice that whenever there's a bipartisan consensus on something in Washington, it's a bad idea. Usually it's the worst idea. There's no bipartisan consensus on saving middle-class America or rescuing rural Americans from fentanyl. There's no bipartisan consensus on that. Nobody cares. The bipartisan consensus is that we should send the contents of the U.S. Treasury to a corrupt Eastern European country to facilitate World War III. Now, why is that? Well, the truth is Washington is so dysfunctional that funding a war, destroying things, is like the one thing they can do. And that's why they love it so much, because they can get something done. Of course, it's purely destructive. So we wanted to talk to Congressman Michael McCall of Texas.
It's the only thing both parties will do and get accomplished and send money to, instead of, like, health care.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just, I'd hate to fucking live there, but I mean, Canada's getting bad too, so.
It's gonna get better.
Hopefully,
just a matter of time.
Hopefully Pierre wins. Yeah. Not Pierre. Yeah, Pierre.
Foreign policy genius. More about this. You don't care what your voters think, really? That's why we asked her to come on tonight. Why do you support a war that your constituents oppose? How does this benefit the United States? Were you proud that you helped Russia and China align in a bloc that's more powerful than the United States? Is that good for us? How does that work, Congressman? He can't make it, unfortunately. Congressman Mike Turner can't come either. He represents Ohio. Senator Mitt Romney of Utah didn't respond at all. Senators Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, of course, hard nose. No way! We're not going to answer questions. Shut up. We'll do CNN first. Now, you should know that everyone we just mentioned is a Republican. They can't defend this, of course. Only a very tiny number of Republicans voted to stop this insanity before it destroys the economy of the United States and triggers World War III. And they've been punished for it. And a lot of Republicans care, because on MSNBC, if you're against World War III, you're an agent of Putin. Watch.
10 House Republicans voted against military aid for Ukraine. Usual suspects, but I'll read them out here. Andy Biggs, Dan Bishop, Warren Davidson, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Ralph Norman, Scott Perry, and Tom Tiffany. The point is, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Vladimir Putin, and too often than I think anyone would like to acknowledge, Tucker Carlson, are all on the same page.
We're on Putin's side. It's funny how the people who hate the United States the most and spend the most time tearing it down, oh, it's tainted by the original sin of slavery, it's a terrible country, 1619 Project, who truly hate the United States, are the one who accuse people trying to save the United States from being destroyed in a pointless war of siding with a foreign dictator. Ignore them. They do not speak in good faith. They're liars. Subscribe to the Fox News.
What's really crazy is, like, you know, they kind of plan 10 steps ahead or try to, and it's like what, you know, even like, what if they think like, if we don't stop China now, like, there will be no stopping China, you know, and they will take over and everything we have will be worthless unless, like, they become Chinese. And then so it's like, you know, like, what's stopping them when they realize this or think this just from just attacking first for full force? You know, like, it could happen overnight.
Exactly.
Like, it's crazy. So, but anyways, like, comment, subscribe, tell us what more videos you'd like us to comment and be on and react to.
Exactly.
All right. Have a great day.
Be you, do you.
Be you, do you.